Hello and welcome viewers, I'm Pia and you're watching the China Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the headlines this hour. China has imposed sanctions on US affiliates of South Korea's Hanwha Ocean, prompting Washington to accuse Beijing of trying to undermine US-South Korea cooperation and exert economic pressure. The House China Committee Chair John Molina has warned that licensing deal allowing China to retain leverage over TikTok's algorithm poses national security concerns even as the US sale moves forward under President Trump's order. Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney has stated that he is expected to meet senior Chinese officials very soon to discuss broader trade issues while sidestepping questions on auto and canola tariff swaps. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi is said face-to-face dialogue is needed to rebuild trust with Sweden after years of strained relations. He's highlighted plans to expand trade, investment and introduce visa-free travel for Swedes. His Swedish counterpart, Maria Malmö Stengrad, has welcomed this initiative. US President Donald Trump has stated that India would halt Russian oil purchases while Britain imposed sanctions on major Russian firms and Chinese energy assets. India and China remain key buyers of discounted Russian crude. Meanwhile, India has emphasized that the interests of its consumers are paramount, and China has stated that US is engaging in unilateral bullying. US President Donald Trump has warned that Hamas must halt internal killings in Gaza, stating that force may be used to disarm the terror group, but has clarified that US troops will not enter the region, leaving action to local forces. Donald Trump has announced that he expects to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin in Budapest within 2 weeks, stating that their recent phone call achieved great progress, which the Kremlin has described as frank and trustful. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has stated that he expects the momentum from the Middle East peace deal to help end the Russia-Ukraine war as well. He's preparing to meet Donald Trump to discuss the Tomahawk missiles and other US defense support for Ukraine. All right, viewers, those are the headlines and our top focus. The US State Department has stated that China's sanctions on US affiliates of South Korean shipbuilder Hanwha Ocean are an attempt to pressurize South Korea and undermine cooperation between Seoul and Washington. The Chinese measures, announced earlier this Tuesday, prohibits transactions and cooperation with 5 US-based entities owned by Hanwha, including Philly Shipyard, which has contracts to repair and overhaul US Navy ships and is also set to build a new US-flagged LNG carrier. The move comes as the United States imposed new port fees on Chinese vessels, to which China responded with similar such reciprocal fees on American ships based on tonnage. Meanwhile, China's foreign ministry has called on the United States and Hanwha to rectify actions that it claims harm Chinese interests, whereas Hanwha USA has confirmed that it is reviewing the details and will continue operations and investments in the US maritime sector. However, South Korea has still pledged up to $150 billion to support the US shipbuilding industry as part of its broader trade negotiations with Washington aimed at lowering US import duties on South Korean goods. Now, as per recent reports, Hanwha Ocean stocks fell more than 8% following the announcement of these particular sanctions. With us on the broadcast is Mr. Ross Feingold, political analyst, joining us from Taipei. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. Fresh development coming in as far as the US-China trade tensions are concerned, and it seems that a South Korean shipbuilding firm is now at the center of this storm. Hanwha Ocean and its US affiliates have now been sanctioned by China. How do you think this will impact Trump's larger goals of increasing shipbuilding in the United States? We do know, and as he's expressed recently, he does want a greater momentum in the shipbuilding industry within the US.
There's tremendous government support at the moment, both Republicans and Democrats, and including the Trump administration, to expand shipbuilding in the United States. Certainly for military or naval purposes, there's a lot of support for expanding shipbuilding capacity on the military naval side. But also for the maritime industry, for the shipping industry, there's also tremendous support there as well. So the United States has been really slow in recognizing the deficiencies of the shipbuilding industry that have developed in recent decades. And it's going to take a lot of time to address that. And frankly, it's going to take a lot of money. So this process will continue regardless of China's actions against Hanwha or any future actions that China takes. But again, we have to keep in mind that as the U.S. tries to expand its domestic shipbuilding capability, it's going to be a very slow process.
Indeed, and speaking of South Korea, we do know that the Asia Pacific Economic Forum Summit is going to be taking place at the end of this month. Donald Trump will be there, so will Xi Jinping, and officials from both countries are stating that their meeting is still on the cards. Do you think it will transpire, or if this trade war escalates even further, that would not take place anymore?
Well, first, they both have to actually show up. And frankly, at the moment, although both sides are indicating that the respective leaders are going to go there, I would say we shouldn't exclude the possibility that one of them ultimately pulls out of attending. It's still possible, however remote that possibility is. But for example, with the U.S. government closed, that could be one reason why President Trump doesn't go. He might say, I need to be in the United States because of that situation. But assuming that they do both go, at a minimum, they're going to shake hands and smile. There's the famous group photo of the APEC leaders, for example. They have the large group of APEC leaders do have a meeting. They'll be in the same room. So they'll definitely meet. And the question now becomes, will they have a lengthy one-on-one meeting? And that's something that President Trump has talked about throughout his presidency, a meeting with Xi Jinping. And recently, Secretary of the Treasury Bessent, when he came back from negotiating with the Chinese, he said this meeting is going to be on at APEC. So the sides are still signaling that this meeting will occur, but obviously tensions are increasing over trade issues. So at a minimum, they might just exchange pleasantries, but there's still the possibility of a lengthy one-on-one meeting. But I will add, though, that time is running out because the leaders need time to prepare, their teams need time to prepare, the sides need to negotiate the agenda and things like that. So if they don't announce it soon, it does become increasingly unlikely that they would have such a lengthy one-on-one meeting.
Coming to the tensions itself, Donald Trump claims that the U.S. is concerned about the rare earths restrictions that China has imposed. Trump has called it a national security issue because we do know that these rare earths are used to manufacture, tech items, specifically defense tech items. In light of that, there are all of his critics who point out that Trump is wielding tariffs as a weapon to secure his own interests. Do you concur more with what Trump is saying or what the critics are pointing out?
The critics really are not going to change Trump's policy. Obviously, he's raised tariffs, and he thinks that's the right thing to do, despite the criticism, concerns about inflation, the cost for American consumers, and the retaliation by other countries, most notably China. But that's not going to change. So higher tariffs on goods from China or other countries around the world, that is President Trump's policy, and no amount of criticism is going to change that. Now, the the restrictions on rare earth exports, of course, it's a national security issue for the United States because, as you said, so many of these rare earths are used in technology and other parts that go into weapons and fighter planes. And of course, they're also relevant in the consumer electronic space as well. So I think President Trump is accurate when he describes it that way. But more importantly is where do we go from here? Are we going to reach a deal with China? Or is the United States going to just look for other sources? And the Trump administration has been willing to invest government money in building more refining capacity in the United States. But just like shipbuilding, that's going to take many, many years until that additional capacity can make up for what is currently done and purchased from China.
All right, Mr. Feingold, I request you to stay on with us as we're tracking some other crucial developments. U.S. Representative John Molina has stated that licensing agreement for the use of the TikTok algorithm as part of the deal by China-based ByteDance to sell U.S. assets of the short video app would raise serious concerns. Molina has also stated that he is waiting for a briefing to learn more about the deal itself and has added that any Chinese leverage over the algorithm would be a serious concern. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order in September, on the 25th to be specific, declaring the plan to sell TikTok's U.S. operations meets national security requirements set out in the 2024 law. And he had also provided for 120 days for the operations to be transferred to U.S.-based entities. Trump delayed the enforcement of the law until 20th January, and in which the agreement includes retraining and monitoring of the algorithm. Now, 6 American board members and ByteDance holding less than 20%, of course, is something that has been chalked out in the deal. Meanwhile, China's Commerce Minister Wang Wentao blamed U.S. restrictions for harming trade talks in a meeting with Apple CEO Tim Cook. Still with us on the broadcast is Mr. Ross Feingold, political analyst. Now, TikTok has reached a preliminary deal with U.S. authorities to sell its U.S. operations to an American-based investor group. Now, we all know in today's digital age, data is practically gold, and there are 170 million users of TikTok within the United States of America. In that context, how crucial is it, the point that has been raised by John Molina, and do you think the Trump administration will then factor this into the deal that finally gets inked and finally gets signed?
The Trump administration is only going to approve a deal under which it is satisfied that user data, the data of American citizens, won't be sent to China. That's a crucial part of any arrangement between ByteDance and the acquiring investor group, just like what the ownership structure will be. That's also a crucial part of the deal as well. So I think we have to give the Trump administration the benefit of the doubt. What I mean is they're only going to approve a deal that satisfies those concerns about user data. But there are going to be critics of the deal. Congress passed this bill really with the goal of ejecting TikTok from the United States. They probably didn't think that there was any possibility that TikTok could be sold and that a new entity could be structured in a way that would address those concerns about user data or Chinese government influence over TikTok's operations. So Representative Molinar is going to probably continue to criticize the deal, but as a Republican, he's going to be somewhat muted in his criticism because he doesn't want to offend the Trump administration. So I think the deal will ultimately go through, but there certainly will be critics.
Mm-hmm. All right, with that said, I'd like to thank you for taking out time, sharing your analysis with us on NewsX World. With that, viewers, we're shifting focus to further developments. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney now expects to meet senior Chinese leader in the coming weeks as bilateral trade discussions resume. Carney has also acknowledged the long-standing tensions between Canada and China and has stated that Canada is seeking broader engagement with Beijing. Listen in.
Our Foreign Minister, Minister Anand, is arriving in Beijing basically as we speak, and will be meeting with her counterparts, and I expect to meet the senior Chinese leadership in the coming month or so, and we'll continue those discussions, and we'll see where the trade relationship evolves. Thank you.
Earlier in August, Chinese officials imposed preliminary anti-dumping duties on Canadian canola, which again was a development that came a year after Ottawa announced 100% tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. More recently, Beijing has indicated that lifting auto tariffs could lead to relief on canola duties, but the Canadian PM has not specified any details or deals, emphasizing that negotiations would cover a wide range of issues beyond single sectors. Additionally, Carney has noted that Canada would need to consider how the United States might respond to any decisions on auto tariffs, given Washington's ongoing trade dispute with China. This is the latest that we're tracking as far as this story is concerned. Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney is expecting to meet senior Chinese leaders in the coming weeks as bilateral trade discussions are set to resume. With us on the broadcast is Mr. Andrew K.P. Leung. He's a strategist focusing on economy and policy as far as China is concerned. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. Interesting development coming in. China, we know, is the second largest trading partner of the United States of America, but there have been some bumps recently as far as the trade ties between I beg your pardon, Canada is the second largest trading partner of the United States, and there have been trade bumps as far as the tariffs are concerned. What do you make of Carney's expected meeting with Chinese officials? What do you think could be the sticking points in Canada-China relations and trade relations specifically that could be brought up?
There are a number of threats in these dynamics that need to be unpacked to understand what's going on. Firstly, of course, as you pointed out, China is not the world's largest trader, the largest manufacturer by far. And it's also the central of the global supply and value chain. And not only rare earths, but if you look at any products, all any supermarkets across the world, Chinese products are predominant. And then even though products not made in China, China's been embedded in it in terms of materials, components, and also logistics. The world's the top container ports out of the top 11 are in China. So that's one dynamic. The other dynamic is that there is a existential rivalry between the United States and China for global dominance, for global influence. Whereas the Trump administration is using the tariffs a kind of a sledgehammer to force China into maybe to defeat China's rivalry, but then China's found a counterweight, a very powerful counterweight in terms of its dominance on rare earths. So I think that there is a tussle there. So that's the second dynamic. And the third dynamic, of course, China's pivoting to other countries, including Canada, including European Union, including Global South. And then the other countries in the Global South, in Canada and the European Union, they also want to recalibrate their relationship with China because, again, President Trump's tariffs sledgehammer is hitting them as well. So again, they want to defend their interests, but that they are less able to counter Americans' coercion compared with China. But also they want to exploit China's potential. Not that they would like to embrace China entirely, but they want to develop a more constructive relationship to hedge their bets.
All right, sir, requesting you to stay on with us. Speaking of recalibration of ties, we're now learning that Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met with Swedish Foreign Minister Maria Malmer Stenergard in Beijing. Now, during the meeting, both sides agreed that rebuilding mutual trust through face-to-face dialogue was essential. China has stated that it is ready to expand trade and investment cooperation with Sweden and plans to introduce a visa-free policy for Swedish citizens in order to boost travel and cultural exchange as well. Now, the talks itself coincided with the 75th anniversary of China-Sweden diplomatic relations as well, with both sides pledging to strengthen collaboration in technology, green development and innovation. China's Wang Yi has also emphasized the importance of viewing each other as partners rather than competitors, while Maria has reaffirmed Sweden's commitment to dialogue and balanced engagement with Beijing. Still with us on the broadcast is Mr. Andrew K.P. Leung. Interesting development between China and Sweden in this case. Both sides are looking at rebuilding trust after years of strained relations. What do you make of Sweden's move to now recalibrate its ties with China, taking into context, as you pointed out, the impact of tariffs on the global supply chains?
As far as Sweden is concerned, the recalibration consists of two main important issues or important opportunities. The first one, of course, Sweden is a highly innovative country, very strong on technology,
Yes.
And it's less confrontational against China. Not that they're going to embrace China entirely, but it's less confrontational towards China compared with the United States. And secondly, the emphasis on tourism suggests that points to China's strategy of growing its soft power by promoting a greater understanding between people, involving people-to-people exchanges in academia, in tourism. Hence, even before the recent trade war, the latest trade war, China already opened up this tourism and giving dozens of Western countries.
Indeed, and you've spoken about tech. We do know that both the United States and China, their economic battle is not just over the rare earths, but broadly also over tech at large, data security. The battle for sixth generation tech, artificial intelligence is also increasing day by day. This is, of course, something that we are going to be looking out for very, very soon. With that, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Andrew K.P. Leung, for taking out time sharing your analysis with us on NewsX World. With that, viewers, we're shifting our focus to Panama. Panamanian President Jose Raul Mulino has accused the United States of pressuring his government to cut ties with Chinese companies, claiming that U.S. embassy officials threatened to revoke visas of Panamanian staff who continued working with them. Mulino has stated that such actions were not coherent with the good relationship he hopes to maintain with Washington. The tensions come as Panama faces increasing pressure from the United States of America to limit Chinese influence over the vital Panama Canal, to which Mulino insists he will remain neutral. Let's in fact listen in to what he had to say.
Cierto es, y esa información sí la tengo, de varios, de que anda una funcionaria por ahí de la embajada amenazando con quitar visas. Eso no es coherente con una buena relación que yo aspiro a mantener con los Estados Unidos. Ellos son libres de poner y quitar visa al que quieran, pero no amenazando de que, Gonzalo, si tú no haces esto, te quito la visa. Los contratos que existan con empresas chinas por parte del Estado son muy conocidos y muy pocos. El puente, hay una participación de ellos en el túnel, cosas que no se pueden eliminar, por más Estados Unidos que seas, no se pueden eliminar.
We're tracking further updates. Western powers are now increasing pressure on Russia's oil sales amid the war with Ukraine. US President Donald Trump has stated that India vowed to stop buying Russian oil, calling it a big step. He's also claimed that efforts will continue to get China to follow up as well. However, India's foreign ministry has stated that it was unaware of any call between Donald Trump and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi where such vows were made. India's External Affairs Ministry has further emphasized that the interest of the Indian consumer is paramount, even as they are looking at diversifying where exactly oil is sourced from. Indian refiners may begin reducing Russian oil imports is what the buzz is, according to reports, although no formal instructions or any statement or any confirmation has been given by the Ministry of External Affairs. Russia currently supplies 36% of India's oil, which is about 1.75 million barrels per day. Meanwhile, the United Kingdom imposed sanctions on top Russian oil firms, including Lukoil and Rosneft, as well as Chinese entities, including Shandong, Yulong Petrochemicals, and several port operators. The sanctions also target 51 ships and LNG facilities linked to Russia. That's a wrap on the China Report. More news and updates on the other side. Stay tuned on NewsX World.